go, guys. So today we're going to learn about unit rates. So we're going to do unit rates today and unit rates tomorrow. So first of all, we have to figure out what a rate is. So the first thing talks about a rate. A rate is a ratio. Bless you. So a rate is a ratio. We've been talking about ratios this entire time. A rate is a specific type of ratio that compares two quantities, so we're still talking about two quantities of different measures. So a ratio is comparing two different numbers, so comparing cats to dogs, boys to girls, brown hairs to blonde hairs, whatever we're comparing, okay? Where a rate is specifically about something that measures something else. So how many of you guys have heard the phrase 60 miles per hour? That's a rate. Okay? There are other ones that are like, I can type 60 words in 1 minute. How many of you guys have heard words per minute? What about like when you go to the grocery store and they say like, it costs you $4.99 for each pound of steak that you buy. So $4.99 per pound of steak. Or when your parents fill the car up with gas, it costs them $2.49 per gallon of gas that they put in their car. All of those things are rates. And we're specifically going to take those rates to find what we call a unit rate. So a unit rate is when the ratio has a second term of 1. And all of the rates that I just gave you were all specifically unit rates. They all got everything to 1. The second number was a 1. So here is how we do it. If we look at this first example, guys, it says $6 for 8 erasers. Your first step is to always write it as a ratio. That's your first step. And we're going to write all ratios as fractions. So how do I write $6 for 8 erasers as a ratio? 6/8. So your first step is to write it as a ratio, meaning write it as a fraction. That's it. Any questions on step 1? Okay, now in order to calculate it, meaning to calculate this, to calculate a unit rate, you are going to divide the blank of the ratio by the blank of the ratio. Who remembers how to take a fraction and turn it into a decimal? Because we've done fractions to decimals to percentages. So how do I take this fraction and turn it into a decimal, McKinley? Excellent. That is exactly what we are going to do. So we are going to divide the numerator, which is what we call the top number of the ratio, by the denominator. Now, just because you get to use calculators does not give you permission to not show your work. Is that understood? You still have to show your work. It is just, you don't have to do the math with it. The calculator does the math. So here's what I mean by showing work. What am I going to do on this problem now? 6 divided by 8. So you guys are literally just going to write 6 divided by 8 equals. That is the work that I need to see. I need to see what you're doing, what you're typing into your calculator to get your answer. So now everyone can type in 6 divided by 8 into your calculator, but don't say it out loud yet. What do we get, everyone? 0.75. So now we have to write it as a unit rate. Okay, writing it as a unit rate does not mean my answer is 0.75. I have to label. What are we talking about in this problem? We're talking about erasers and dollars, money, how much they cost. So what does this mean right here? 75 cents. So I'm going to put a dollar sign in front because that dollar sign in front represents the money aspect of it. But I'm not done. Because it's not just 75 cents, it's 75 cents per eraser. Now, we don't have to write the word per, okay? Per is written with a backslash, a division sign that we would write. So you write 75 cents per is that backslash, and then you would write eraser. And that is your answer. If you do not have that entire thing, you will be wrong. So let's write this down. Backslash equals per. It also means divide. All of those things mean the same thing. Questions on that? Okay, last thing here, we got a little hint. When dealing with cost, meaning when dealing with money, what always goes in the numerator? The money or the other thing? Money. Money always goes on top, guys. Always, always, always. I don't care if it's written first, if it's written last. Money goes on top. There is 0 exceptions to that rule. Is that clear? Otherwise, you write it as you read it. But money always goes on top. Okay, so if we do the next one, I have 300 miles in 5 hours. Step 1, write it as a ratio. Go. Seven, how'd you write it? Excellent. So your ratio is 300 over 5. You should all have that written down. Do I have any questions on how we write it as a ratio? Next step. 2. Hank, what's the next thing I do? Divide what? Excellent. So I'm going to write 300 divided by 5 equals. Then I'm going to take my calculator and do the math. Some of you might be able to do this one in your head. $14. What's 300 divided by 5? 60. Now we have to write it in our unit rate with our labels. And remember, there is always 2 labels with unit rate. Always. So, Emma, how do you think I write this one? 60 what? 64. What are the 2 things we're talking about? But what are the 2 things we're talking about in our problem? So how do we write it? 60 60 miles per hour. No question, guys. Is there an abbreviation that means miles per hour? What is it? So I could write MPH because that is a legit abbreviation, so we can use it. Eraser does not have an abbreviation, so I have to write eraser out. Questions? Yes. 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 Can you write it all out? Absolutely. Absolutely. Noah. You just got to make it shine so you can get light. No, because then people can't see the board. Okay, next one. Write it as a ratio. 98 students in 4 classes. Write it as a ratio. 17. How do you write it? Perfect. 98/4. Number 20. What do I do to solve it? Excellent. You type that into your calculator. Six. Tell me what you get when you got it. What? You're close. I think you just had your decimal in the wrong spot. There we go. Yes, yes. 24.5 is what you should get in your calculator when you solve that one. So then, number 4, McKinley, how do I write that as my answer? Okay, but I gotta have 2 labels, so classes is just 1 label. Okay, so whole thing, how do I write it? What's my first label? Students, because it comes first, so that's my first label. What do I need to add? Per classes, or per class. So we'd have 24.5 students per class. Now I know that that makes absolutely no sense because we can't have half a person, right guys? But it doesn't say anything about rounding, so literally just leave your answer as it is, even though it doesn't make sense. Got it? Okay. Questions? Okay. You and the person you are sitting with are going to do the last 3 questions together, showing all work just like we have been doing on the top 3. Got it? Okay, work together. All right, here we go. Number 5. How did you write this first one as a ratio? Excellent. Number 3. What did you do to solve it? Okay, good. And number 21, what did you get as my answer? 8 what? 8 chairs per row. Questions on that one at all, you guys? 25. How did you write the first one or the next one as a ratio? Perfect. Number 15. How did you solve it? 336 Perfect. Number 1. What did you get as the answer? 42 what? 42 students per bus. Very nicely done. 19. How did you write the last one as a ratio? Perfect. Number 12. How did you solve it? Very good. And number 13. What's my answer? 6 what? 6 horses per stable. Questions? Yes, ma'am. What if you divide something that it's like it has like tons of stuff after? You only round if it's necessary, okay, or they tell you to. So like money, you would always round on because it's money. Okay? Otherwise, you only round if they tell you to round. Okay? Good question. That make sense, guys? All right, I want to do like 1 or 2 more problems on your whiteboards. So let's take out dry erase markers.